Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
All right. So last week, we wrapped up really reflecting on the benefits of ethics, the benefits of virtue, the way virtue allows us all spiritual growth, all ways for karma to ripen in our mind streams and the access to wisdom. So we've covered that. Now the next part of the text that we'll bring up is how we guard these ethics here. So the 4 doors to downfalls in the practice of ethics. And this is the story, right? We can know a lot, but if we're not mindful, it gets tricky. And it's the old saying, we can know better but not do better. So when practicing ethics, there are 4 factors we need to watch out for and counteract. These are known as the 4 doors leading to downfalls, broken precepts, and negative behavior. So the first one is not knowing. The first door is not knowing. If you don't know how to differentiate virtuous and non-virtuous actions, or if you take precepts but aren't sure how to keep them, you might unknowingly cultivate non-virtue and break these precepts. To avoid this problem, study teachings on karma and your precepts, and you can also ask your teachers questions to clarify any doubts that you might have and make sure your understanding is correct. It's actually a pretty big topic, knowing. Everybody here, we've gone over like 10 virtuous actions, 10 non-virtuous actions. I'm sure you guys could just rattle them off. Uh, and so, the knowing of virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind, the ones to avoid, the ones to cultivate. I know you guys know it. I don't need to remind you, but just in case there's any new folks here online. With the body, no killing, stealing, or sexual misconduct. With speech, no lying, harmful speech, divisive speech, or idle gossip. And with the mind, covetousness, ill will, wrong view. And so these are ones that we do actually, have right in our prayer book. It's available. It's something to refresh our mind. And but as we get into those, we can notice there's subtleties, right? So no killing can go all the way up to non-harming. And we can, instead of swatting that fly, maybe zap it up and put it outside, or that spider. We can really care about how we protect life, the life that's around us, being mindful as best we can. And stealing, not returning things. I don't know about you, but have you ever loaned a book and never saw that book again? I might have one I borrowed, So, just these things, we don't even intend to, but really, honoring that somebody, gave us something to use for a bit. And just thinking about how we care for that. The ways that we engage with each other, do we do it in a non-harmful way or a harmful way? So that's just sort of the breadth. It really comes down to not harming all of these, right? Because how do we not harm with our speech? How do we not harm with our mind? How do we not harm with our activities? So body, speech, mind, non-harming. And so that's a shortcut. It's a nice shortcut. Am I engaged in something that's harmful, or not harmful. And that includes self. I was reflecting, some of you know I had a birthday on Monday. Recently. Apparently I didn't know it. I thought it was Tuesday. But I was thinking about what's the gift, it's the I was, with these teachings, I was thinking, is there any greater gift I can give myself than virtue? And I couldn't think of one. There's probably some might be up there equal, but nothing greater than giving myself the gift of virtue to act ethically, to act in a non-harmful way, to engage in virtue. What greater gift could we possibly give ourselves? It's a treasure. It's something that opens so much for us, so much peace of mind, so much well-being, so much freedom. To not have to hide something, to just be free, just be who you are. Nothing to hide, nothing to be anxious about, nothing to be less than the gift of virtue. And so it has all these benefits, and something that we can, safeguard, that we can treasure, that we can nurture, that we can grow. And the thing about virtue is, the more we offer, the more we have. It's one of those things like compassion. The more we offer, the more there is. We don't run out. We don't run out. And so knowing what these virtuous activities are, is helpful. But we can also sometimes get really caught up in micromanaging, and questioning things. And then that's where the big shortcut, I think, for me, rather than, when you take precepts, for example, as a monastic, there's many, many vows. As bodhisattva vows, there's many of those to remember. And if you're doing Vajrayana vows, so anyway, I have this big long list. And I'm going to tell you, I can't remember all hundreds of them, right? But I had a formula that was taught to me, like you'd list them and then do a cycle of 7. So every day just focus on one, and you'd rotate through them. So at least you're touching them at some point in the year and bringing them to mind. And so that was this one method. But what it really boils down to is, if we think about karma, is to, what's our motivation, right? What's our motivation? And if we go right to the root of the creation of samsara, of all our mental afflictions, it's arising from a self-grasping in a way we don't exist, right? This misunderstanding of ourselves, this misperception, self-centeredness, that then leads to attachment and aversion, right? It starts to spin this whole wheel. I exist independently. These things are good. These things are not good. I like this. I don't like that. And now I'm out of a self-centered attachment or aversion, creating all the afflictions, the worries, the fears, the anxieties, the desires, the compulsions. And so this spins the wheel of samsara. It creates the limited condition that we find ourselves in as humans. And so it's kind of an interesting quick check. Am I motivated out of self-centeredness, out of attachment, out of some anger, hatred, aversion, or the opposite? And renunciation. Renunciation of the self-centeredness, renunciation of an independent self, of misperception. Am I motivated by an understanding of our interdependence and this journey that we're on, of this understanding of karma, interdependence, and impermanence? Am I motivated out of a we-centered motivation, which would counteract the selfishness? Am I motivated out of compassion instead of ill will, or am I motivated by loving kindness, instead of hatred? And so a quick check is my motivation coming from this renunciation, loving kindness or compassion. Non-harm or goodwill is a way of putting it in the Pali Canon. Renunciation, non-harm, goodwill. Goodwill would be loving kindness, non-harm would be compassion. And so it's really nice to kind of check ourselves on that. What's my motivation here? And any of those motivations have renunciation, compassion, loving kindness, or wisdom, loving kindness, compassion could be another way of translating that. Well, that's freedom. That's the path of freedom. Everything's good from that. The action. It's not the action, it's the motivation. Anything from self-centeredness, grasping onto attachment, desire, in a way, that things don't exist, and this aversion or anger and hatred is going to create the non-virtuous results. And bear in mind, none of this is, somebody's up there saying, oops, you screwed up, you're going to get this. It's just the nature of how things work, the nature of how things exist, and the definition of virtue or non-virtue. It's just whether or not you get a pleasurable result or an unpleasant result. It's just, Buddha's just saying that's just how it is. It's nobody's judging anything. Certain activities and actions of body, speech, and mind have these kinds of results, and certain ones have these kinds of results. One imprisons us more and one frees us more. So there's no judgment. There's no you're a good person or a bad person. We're just afflicted, and out of our afflictions and trying to be okay, out of our misunderstanding, we can either be creating, this wheel of samsara, or with some wisdom, we can be creating this freedom. And so then they make these, the top 10 list of how people get in trouble is those 10 non-virtuous or unwholesome activities by speech, mind. They say there's 84,000, but I can't remember that many. So, but the top 10, got a shot. And so just, remembering this, and the thing is, calling it to mind, recollecting. So this first way to protect ourselves is knowing, just knowing. And if I can't remember all 10, I can remember, check my motivation. Am I harming, not harming? Am I self-centered or we-centered? Am I coming from a place of compassion, or, selfishness? Am I willing to share my cherry pie or not? Yeah. All right, Roxanne, you've had your hand up. I hope it's not tired. It's been a while. Are you there?
Yeah, it takes me a while to get
Your ceiling is.
unmute. Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Maybe my speaker didn't get set with all my sound issues here. No, I think we're good.
So can you hear me?
I can't hear you, though.
I'm talking. Can you hear me?
Hang on a sec.
We
Thanks.
can all hear.
Yeah, no, headphones, Zoom, speaker.
Maybe we can talk about John behind his back.
Should be good. I can't hear you. What if somebody else could say something? I heard Kurt a little while ago, right?
Can you hear me now? No. I turned the speakers off.
No. Wow, we're having all kinds of adventures.
There's the sound here is indicating that it's off.
That is off. This one.
Yeah, we want to see.
John, how about here? Can you hear that?
Okay. Hang on. That's weird. I heard you earlier. Oh. Hang on a sec.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should push buttons, right? Not that I know which ones to push. Okay. That's plugged in, zooms in, goes in.
Here Now Center says they can hear everyone.
Yeah, they can. It's my speaker that's not working.
Everyone? You hear everyone?
Can
This
you
is
hear
fine.
anyone?
All right. Try saying something now.
Something now.
No,
Can you hear this?
What?
Should we bring audio in from there?
remind me.
Uh-oh.
Heard something. Try to use-
How about now?
um,
Can you hear us? No.
Okay. Let's try that.
Can you hear us
Hello?
now?
All right, we're good.
Okay.
All very exciting.
I just got a notice that light rain is going to be starting in 15 minutes.
Okay, so that's what you were raising your hand for. Thank you. Appreciated that.
So thinking about non-lying and non-stealing, I remember when I was a child and we learned about the 10 Commandments, and I always thought about stealing having to do with physical objects and lying having to do with something that you do on purpose. And then later on, I had a teacher who said that you can steal non-physical things like people's time or their good mood or their self-image. You know, you can do divisive speech and steal someone's reputation, quote unquote, that kind of thing. So that was a whole new perspective for me, to be able to steal non-physical things from people. And then lying is kind of like, you can maybe do it not on purpose if you don't have the right information, but you also have to be able to not lie to yourself. If you're lying to yourself, you may not realize that you're lying to somebody else. And if you're lying to somebody or about somebody, then you're stealing their mood or their reputation or something like that. So it made a big difference to me to think about it in non-physical terms. It goes a lot deeper than just physical stuff.
Yeah, thank you. And you'd see where the speech would be in one of those things, like divisive speech would be, or harmful speech, would be in those ways of harming someone.
Yeah, gossip,
Yeah,
stuff like that. Yeah. That's it.
thank you. Yeah. So when the not knowing will also, just apply to forgetfulness too. Do you want to just double check on the text so I don't get ahead of what they're, yeah. So, if we don't make the effort to bear in mind, right, to bear in mind, to be mindful, to bear in mind what's virtuous and what's not, that's going to be a way of not knowing. So just taking some time to know, to check in on our motivations. And, remember that karma is preceded by motivation. So the movement of mind, the movement of motivation is going to have a huge impact on its ultimate result. So just being as mindful as we can. Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo talks about kindfulness, being mindful, being kind. So that's a good state of mind. All right. So one way to protect ourselves is know what virtue is and what non-virtuous is. And let's pop open the text here. carelessness. The second door is carelessness. Even if you know about karma and how to keep your precepts, you might not really you may not really care about avoiding non-virtue and creating virtue. This is the meaning of carelessness. Its opposite is conscientiousness, a mental factor that is concerned about virtue and wants to protect the mind from delusions. Cultivating the following four factors will help you be more careful and conscientious. There's the four. They're suggesting mindfulness, which we we're just talking about, keeping in mind what's wholesome and unwholesome, and which precepts you have taken. So just a practice. Some of you, I know, do check-ins, a few times a day. Check in what's been skillful, what's been unskillful. So the mindfulness program, offers that teaching. One of the things you could do is set appointments with yourself, and at your check-in 3 to 6 times a day is go through that list. 10 things. Okay, have I lied? Have I harmed? Just do a quick check-in, and then write what you did well, what's virtuous, and if there's something that was non-virtuous, just jot that down. And then a few hours later, have an appointment with yourself, jot down. And this way you kind of keep the list and you keep checking in on your virtue and noting anything non-virtuous. Then in the evening, if you do a purification practice, you can just purify any non-virtue that day. So it's a really nice way to just keep your street clean, just really nice. So every evening you do Vajrasattva practice, purification. And so we just, we don't let it build up. We just know what's going on. So that's one way of being conscientious. So in our mindfulness programs, we teach, setting that clarity in the day and then checking in 3 to 6 times a day. And just noting, what have I done well? What I like to improve? What's skillful? What's unskillful? And so that's a really good way of engaging then with this conscientiousness, this mindfulness of what's liberating you, what's imprisoning us. Right. Introspective awareness, watching your mind and behavior to make sure you avoid non-virtue. So in between those check-ins, you probably should be paying attention. That'd be helpful. So check in with the mind. Those check-ins are nice spots. One of the teachings that Jetsam also, was given to her by the yogis was to just check her mind 3 times an hour. Just check the mind. Where's your mind? Not judge, not a big check in virtue. Just where is it? Just where is it? Quick. Where's my mind? Just 3 times an hour. That way, at least you kind of know where your mind is, and it kind of brings you back. So I've never been very successful with that practice, but it's good advice. What's the old saying? Yeah, sure, it's good advice. Maybe I'll try it one day. I have tried it, but I carried through a whole days. It's a bit challenging. So, but things like that, things that you can do to remind yourself, to bring your mind back and be aware. And then personal integrity, refraining from negative actions out of a sense of self-respect. For example, it wouldn't be right for me to do that. And that's where I'm thinking this idea of self-respect, of what's the greatest gift I can give myself, is virtue. I mean, I deserve to not act out in that behavior. I deserve to not do that, I'm harming myself. I'm limiting myself. I deserve to not do that, which is very different than, when we take vows and precepts, especially in monastic life, they're freedom vows. I'm free from creating all that, afflictive states. I'm free of that. These are not things I can't do. They're things I'm free to no longer, imprison myself with. They create freedom. So they're freedom vows. So you can really devote yourself to the spiritual practice. And so if we, sit there and look at like, 10 commandments, thou shalt not, that's kind of a harsh thing, instead of you deserve to not do this, right? You deserve to be free of the results of these types of activities, so that's self-respect. And then of course, how do we feel when I'm ethical? How do I feel about myself? How do I, engage with others? I can look people in the eye, I have a lot more freedom. So this self-respect, I feel, when you think about people you admire, generally they're pretty ethical. And yeah. And there's somebody that we have with us all the time, ourselves. It'd be nice to have a good, admirable friend with us at all times, All right. Yeah, so personal integrity. Oh, you guys can't see that. I didn't share it. I just pulled it up. Share screen. Personal integrity. And the fourth is consideration of others, refraining from negative actions out of concern for others, such as not wanting to upset them or be a bad influence. And so this is one of those tricky things, because we actually may find that in general, it might be easier to be kinder to others than we are to ourselves. Like number 4 might be easier than number 3. For others, I'm willing to do a lot, but myself, nobody's around, whatever, or I don't even have self-care in a sense, but willing to extend ourselves for others. So, but if we can really recognize that all others are, the cause for our awakening, all others are, really the cause for us to have a life at all. And that their lives matter, that's great compassion. Then, everyone in front of us, we can be there for them, and they're offering us an opportunity. And so that's really helpful. So those are the first 2. The third one, you gotta love Tibetan Buddhism. We got a list and we have a sub list. So number 2 had 4 parts. And then each of those parts have a subpart. So we got lots of lists. So lack of respect. The third door is lack of respect for the Buddha and his teachings, as well as for your teachers and spiritual friends. For example, if you are not happy about some of the advice you receive from your teacher and think, my teacher is so strict and controlling, I'm not going to do what they say. I'm not going to go the whole he, she thing there. They say. Teachers are of all shapes and sizes. You will become careless about your behavior and even break precepts. To counteract this problem, cultivate respect for the Buddha, the Dharma, your spiritual teachers, and companions by contemplating their good qualities and how they help you. And this one, if we really want to get somewhere in life, this is right there. This is, devotion. And devotion, I was just listening to a talk. Lately, I've been learning more and more about the nuns at Gebchuk nunnery in Tibet. These nuns are phenomenal. They're in meditation. Most of their life, they have meditation boxes. They don't lay down, to go to bed. They, they achieve incredible, states of being, and they even have, on the plateau out, the hillside behind their nunnery, we're talking like super cold weather, way up in very, very remote Tibet. you know, they dig little holes where they meditate and they have like a little shelter over it. So you just see the front, you know, and they're just there, you know, and they have huts that they'll build out there as well. And, you know, they do tumo inner fire so they don't ever get cold. And, you know, they're just dedicated, you know, they're just dedicated. And I've been posting the last couple of days pictures, you know, like of that little hut on the sides. And so I've been learning more about the history of the teachers and this Namjuk region. And the Great Lama said, you know, none of these yogis ever achieved their awakening due to their knowledge, but rather due to their devotion. And what it's sharing is that, you know, when devotion will get you through difficult times where knowledge won't. If you believe in something, if something makes sense, if you have that devotion, you know, then it just ripens in ways that can really go through things. And these nuns, you know, they have such examples of that. And so the opportunity to really develop a devotion, a respect based on, you know, something you can really lean into, you know, not just made up devotion, not just, you know, like I've checked this out. This is amazing. These teachings, you know, really speak to me. There's benefit here. This is a path. These are things I can rely upon. So we have to do all that checking. Devotion needs to arise out of actual experience and checking, you know, on the teachings and the teachers and so forth. Like it really needs to be well investigated. But as you've done that, then this devotion can come. And one way to really be clear about devotion is when you see a teacher, for example, you know, it's really not the teacher, it's the teaching. It's the teaching. Yeah, it's the words of the Buddha coming through someone. And, you know, so at that moment, you know, the Buddha's present. The Buddha's words are present. That's the thing, not the person, right? It's not about the person. And so, you know, when the Dharma comes in whatever form it shows up, you know, to really, you know, if it's true Dharma, if it's Dharma that is moving you towards liberation, and that can come in many forms, in many traditions. The Dharma's truth, right? The Dharma's truth, and it can come from all different religious traditions and so forth, right? It can come from people who don't look like anything but an auto mechanic. You know, the Dharma can be coming. So the Dharma is coming through someone, you know, and have that kind of devotion, you know, to know that, wow, this is, you know, this is the path. This is something that's so valuable. And so, you know, developing that, but not blindly, right? Not blindly. There's a lot of damage that gets done by blindly devoting ourselves and doing things that are actually unethical, the teachers that are not very ethical, and you know, some things that, you know, as we know, you can look around, there's lots of problems with different teachers of all kinds of things, whether it's a dentist or a yoga teacher or a priest or a Buddhist teacher, or, you know what I mean? Anyone in these things, you know, they're in samsara. So I always want to be very clear about the qualities of the teaching, the teachers, um, and over time, you know, we can develop some of that capacity to have some trust, some faith, and then some devotion. But then the devotion is that the delivery vessel is of quality, but it's the teaching, not the teacher. It's the teaching, right? It's the Dharma. It's the Buddha's words coming through someone. So when you get to later stages and what we call like guru yoga practice, we're really seeing the teacher as the Buddha, because at that moment, you know, the Buddha is speaking through this person, right? And this unbroken opportunity to have the teachings come through. And so developing that takes a long time, and it, but if that can happen, like these nuns, like wow, like wow, I'm just so dazzled by them. Then that's quite amazing. It'll just get you through so much. So, so really having a respect for the teachings and the which doesn't mean a teacher gives you bad advice, you take it. It means you question and you work at it. But at some point, you'll find a teacher that you'll know that whatever words are coming are helpful in some way. And that's a treasure. All right. And the fourth one, right? I need to wait for all my pop-ups to go away. Strong delusions. I know about those. Okay. This could be a long topic. The fourth door is strong delusions. I don't know if anybody else can relate. So these can take over our mind, inciting us to act destructively and break precepts. So we need to apply antidotes to them. It's difficult to work on all of them at once. So start with whichever delusion is strongest and most problematic. Once that delusion has been subdued to a certain extent, you can then work on the next strongest and so on. It is vital to familiarize yourself with antidotes so you can swiftly bring them to mind when delusions arise. And so I think, we've covered that topic before. Is, okay, we have a list, right? There's things to work on. I have issues here, there. I have delusions in certain ways, but generally there's one that's the biggest, that's very prominent, and it's like, let's just start there. What's my biggest sort of pattern, habit? And let's just work on that. Let's just work on that. And, I'm a few decades into this, and I'm very clear about what my primary one is. It's been around for a few decades. I'm thinking I'll work on it. Or maybe I'll start it tomorrow. But it subsides in times, right? And I work on other things, But yeah, years later, those mind stream habits can come up again. But there's generally one, you just kind of notice. And so it's really nice to just, if you're going to set like a mindfulness practice, I'm going to work on this one thing, and I do my check-ins. I just check on that. And as that comes, as the antidotes arise, as it subsides, then we can move on to another. But knowing the antidotes is important. And one of the, one of the great skillful methods, which we learn in the 7-point mind training, is to hit the pig on the nose. So to hit the pig on the nose, you're living in Tibet, you get a 200-pound pig coming in the kitchen, you hit it on the nose quick so it stays out, because once that 200 pounds gets in the kitchen, you're done. You're not getting the pig out. And so the idea is that as soon as you start notice the desire, the impulse, the tendencies, as quickly as you can counteract it before it becomes strong compulsion, you got a shot, once the strong compulsions and the pig's in the door, you got a 200-pound pig to deal with. Not so easy. And so the way, though, that you can get to that is you start noticing the preceding states of mind, of body, that will trigger sort of these desires or impulses. And, kind of tracing down to where you can catch it a lot quicker than, when you're triggered. So there are certain habits, if you start noticing there's certain patterns that'll happen early on, and your mind will start ruminating something, it'll start growing. You want to catch it real quick. I was a monk for a number of years, and sexual desire would pop up, right? And so, I would start noticing like, you're driving down a highway and there's a bulletin board, on the picture, it's like catch it and then start thinking, right? An image of, someone attractive. And so I'd notice you got to catch it right there instead of then think about it and then, let something grow, right? A desire grow. So, like if you catch it then, and by the time you get home or you do these other things and you've been letting your mind kind of indulge, then it's a big thing. But if you can catch it's a poster of an image that's going to trigger a lot of pain and suffering for me. And I have these vows in a different life. You catch it quick, before it snowballs. So, getting tired, that's another thing. We'll let our guard down when we're tired, get, so just noticing sometimes we're tired, we're not as we're more susceptible. And so just, being aware of these things so we can catch them quicker. All right, here and now center.
Hi. I was just wondering if you could, I guess I'm not getting it super well. Could you explain a little bit more about the antidotes? Like what exactly that looks like? Or I guess like examples? I don't know. Just like a little more elaboration on that, please.
Yeah, there's actually quite a big list of antidotes, which they're not listing here. So, so there are many, antidotes for specific afflictions. And what we can do is we can post. There's a good article. Keith had me post that before, right? That list of antidotes and nod your head, Keith, if I'm making this up or not. Okay, good. And I can post them in the community. So, because you there are different antidotes for different types of afflictions, but like the, very simple one with anger, for example, often the antidote being patience, right? So patience, the antidote to anger is the ability to cultivate patience. So as anger rises, I don't react to it. It's able to come and go. And so as we cultivate patience is not something you want to try to cultivate when you're angry. It's too late. So what you want to do is start cultivating the capacity to be patient. So you work on patience, throughout the week and just noticing little irritabilities and these little irritabilities that pop up and just notice them and let them come and go. Little things. You just kind of notice yourself being impatient. I'm in a hurry for something. Take a breath, slow down. And so you start developing this skill of patience with little things. And then when you do get angry, when anger, right, you have the muscle of patience. You develop the skill. You're developing the antidote. Loving kindness, it'd be an antidote to anger and hatred. So cultivating loving kindness practice, metta, is going to counteract anger and hatred. Compassion practices will be antidotes to ill will, cruelty, equanimity, to these attachments and aversions. So there's these qualities and attributes and antidotes that we can cultivate within ourselves that will offset these main afflictions. Desires, these impulses for desire. There's, depending on the desire, there's different ways to address that. So so there's a pretty good list. I'll post it in there, and I think Jessica could probably share with you if you're not in the community. It's free, totally free, and there'll be a list there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. That helps a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let's read the little summary here. So, conclusion. resolve to look out for the 4 factors that lead to downfalls: not knowing, carelessness, lack of respect, and delusions. And to cultivate the factors that protect you from these. Study mindfulness and introspective awareness, respect, and applying antidotes to delusions. Encourage yourself to live ethically, recalling the benefit it brings not only to yourself, but to all living beings. And so that's where I began, is when I recognize the treasure of virtue, it's going to be really important. Like, what's a better gift I can give myself? What's a better gift? And then we can hold it, like this treasure. And so as we, we here in Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhist practice specifically, you'll notice, the texts are wrapped up, right? They're well taken care of. There's a brocade, that's laid here. The altar's done in a certain way. These are all things that cultivate some devotion, some sense that these things bring us freedom, that they're special. And, as much as I like East of Eden by John Steinbeck, it's not wrapped up in this, okay? Though there's a lot of wisdom in that book. But it's the same way with our ethics, right? We want to wrap it up nicely. We want to, this is important. This is, and that translates to, just all humanity, whether it go back through all the wisdom traditions and Aristotle and so forth. And the most recent research, I just did because I just did 10 citations on reference studies for well-being. Purpose, ethics, and values are always key to well-being in modern Western psychology as well. It's when we don't have anything to hide, when we live ethically, when we live in a way that is virtuous, that adds to the quality of the world, we feel better about who we are. We're more resilient. It's just, to have nothing to hide. Like, wow. To have nothing to hide. You're okay. Yeah, I mess things up, but I'm trying, and we can admit our mistakes, and we're just, we're okay. Like, that's right. We can say, yeah. So this is the foundation of all spiritual growth. This is the foundation of all well-being. This is the foundation of a meaningful life. This is the foundation of everything. I just can't emphasize enough ethics and value. It's just the foundation for everything. And so if we can really see and recognize the value of that, the reward of that, and hold that lightly, we won't fall so easily into carelessness. And so the reminders each day, to see the value, see how you feel about yourself when you do good, Yeah. I let Laura have more of my French fries last night than I ate. Just saying. Man, that was hard. I'm kidding. But that desire that you want somebody to be happy, right? You feel good. So I felt good about that. That's the thing, like little things, right? Doesn't have to be major things. Just watch our mind. Is our mind being selfish, or do we want someone to be happy? Right. One motivation is self-centered, limiting, and samsara. One motivation is liberating, freeing. So watch that mind, Got some pie last week, didn't you? Yeah, it's good to give you some pie. Now I got some apricot preserves.
Scratch my back, I said.
Yeah. Karma goes around, comes around. We're very fruity over here. Fruit pie, apple preserve, or apricot preserve. Yeah. Yes, Dan.
Can you talk a little bit more about the
Can you talk a little more about the purification practice?
Yeah. So there is a purification practice, and in our little booklet that we have, so we do there's a morning practice that's required every day. There's also Vajrasattva practice. 4 opponent powers basically to purify negativities. And in the morning practice at the bottom, there's actually a link to a little video of a nun, doing it. It takes about 12 minutes, 13 minutes. She has a short version of it. And but we have the text. And on Sundays, when we do the Chenrei Sig, we always include a purification practice. So that's recorded as well. So you can listen to that. But basically, 4 opponent powers. The power of what we call an intelligent regret. Intelligent regret. We bring to mind what we've done that we don't feel good about. And we cultivate this intelligent regret. And we just hold it up and we see how it harmed ourselves and others. And it's not shame, it's not guilt, it's wisdom. It's like, oh yeah, this is limiting me. This is harm. I see the connection here. I see how this is harmful. And so you get a wisdom that comes up, like you really see, oh, this is not how I want to live. So you really spend some time, you put yourself there and you note what we call an intelligent regret. So it's not shame or anything. It's nothing. It's just, yeah, the afflictions drove me this. I see why it happened and all that. So I get some wisdom. And then this resolve, so we have, you have visualize the booth and all that. And I'm just going through the main points. This resolve to not do. So we repair, so refuge, we repair our relationship with the Dharma, with our teachers, the 3 jewels. We have this refuge. We let them know, I'm going to do my best to not do that again, right? I'm going to have this firm resolve that when I start feeling these sensations, there's actually a little meditation called Transforming Unskillful Events, where you can actually kind of feel that and then choose a different action when I feel this, right? A healthier one. And then a remedial activity. So something I'm going to do of good karmic imprint to be helpful that will offset that. So there's these 4 opponent powers, this intelligent regret, this refuge or repairing the relationship, the resolve, and then a remedial activity. So they're all R's, 4 R's. Remember that way. And so doing that every day. So it's embodied in a Vajrasattva practice that we have. So Vajrasattva is usually used to purify. And then the shortest version we have is just called Transforming Unskillful Events. I just see, it was not very skillful. What's the habit? How can I do it differently? And so you're really just working with your mind stream to respond differently and moving towards wisdom and understanding. So there's really what changes everything is when we change, right? Yeah. Okay, that raised a couple of hands. I might be in trouble now. All right, Ashley.
Yeah, could you repost that Vajrasattva practice? Because I haven't seen it on the website in a while.
It should be at the bottom of the daily guidance of the daily practice every day. Have you ever scrolled down to the bottom?
Yeah, and I didn't see it.
Maybe I'm not copying it anymore. Okay, thank you. I'll look. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm looking on my phone at the bottom of the page.
Uh-huh.
It is there, but it's just Ashley, it's just different than it was a while back because I think Mighty Networks changed the way the screen looks a little bit. Oh, okay. Yeah, but it's there. Okay, thank you.
And there's a commentary by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I think, or Lama Yeshe. Yeah, so there's some stuff there. I've been saying I'm going to record a guided practice, and I'll just keep saying that. Okay, that it's going to happen. All right, Katie.
She's still muted.
You're muted still. Yeah.
I hit the volume button, but not my audio button. I was saying thank you everyone for being here, and thanks for the teachings, John. A little ping came up for me. This is actually prior, not to what you were just speaking to, but the whole idea of wanting others to be happy and acting out of concern for others. I think in my experience, that can be, I can act in that way and it can come from a self-centered place. And so just like watching for myself, the difference between really diving a little deeper and contemplating what might actually lead to someone's experience of well-being or happiness, and my own versus wanting someone to feel happy and not wanting to be the source of their suffering, like not wanting them to be uncomfortable because of something I've said, even if what I've said is actually compassionate, right? Like is a compassionate thing to do. And so I think yeah, wanting others to be happy could get confusing in my mind. And so really looking a little deeper at if I'm acting out of caring what others may think about me, or if I'm acting out of what I think might truly be helpful or healthy.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah. As Roxanne was talking about earlier, we can lie to ourselves too, and we can rationalize it, but it's just not knowing sometimes, right? That's what I'm hearing, just not knowing sometimes. So being real clear about what's my real motivation. And Kurt has pointed out many times, sometimes his motivation for someone to be happier is so that he doesn't have to suffer watching him be unhappy, and that can be a self-centered kind of thing. I'm uncomfortable when others are uncomfortable. And that's where as we've talked many times, is, just checking the motivation and using the word healthy, like what's the healthy thing to do here? But it does require a deeper level of awareness of our motivation, which I know you have, and which explores this. Like how can I truly, so loving kindness is always going to be focused on the desire for self and others to really be well, to be well. And so what's the corresponding action for that? Yeah. All right, microphone.
So this is a specific question, and normally I would just ask afterwards, but I feel like it might be pertinent given the times and a feeling that other people are engaging with as well. The closest that I can attribute it to would be maybe wrong view, but recently I've been noticing if, while progressing in other ways in my mindfulness practice and such, that I've been still feeling, if you're familiar with the term Schadenfreude, or like a feeling of joy sometimes in justice or in what I see as justice in others being harmed. And I recognize it and try to, let it pass. But we talked about actions or practices that will protect us against that. I forget the word that you used. How would you start to nip that in the bud or punch the pig in the nose, however you say that?
Yeah. And I think, for me, I keep going to this analogy that we're all suffering from a disease, right? a disease of samsara, a disease of confusion, a disease of afflicted states, karma and klesha that everyone, is. And, different people do malicious and harmful things, right? And it's very, this human nature to take joy when, they, it doesn't work well for them, or, rejoice in that. And then we're in ill will. And so ill will is the opposite of compassion, right? Compassion is, I don't want people to suffer. Ill will is, I do want them to suffer. I take joy. Right? It didn't work out. They got caught, whatever it is. They got harmed. And so, noting that I'm, my mind's going towards ill will or rejoicing in their hardship. Versus recognizing the damage done, the damage they've done, the damage that is done by our common disease. And, and relating it to, somebody's got a treatable disease and that is going to be done in a week. And somebody's a quadriplegic. And I want the quadriplegic to really feel bad. It's kind of like the person who's really afflicted mentally and emotionally, has the biggest disease. I want them to suffer more than someone who has less of a disease, who's more balanced, has, other opportunities and knows love a little more. I want them to be well, but the people who are really sick, I want them to be sicker, right? And so I watch my mind in that way, as I get to say, wow, actually, in this samsaric world that we're in, and you just see the damage, right? Someone was assassinated today, just before this, right? He was killed in, and this is someone who had said actually that some people will die, and that, for the cause that's, like, someone getting shot for their thing. Like, he actually took that view, right? And it turned out to be him. And so you see, wow, the violence, right? The political violence, the killing, you see that suffering. And then you see the suffering. There's a shooting at a school here in Colorado, right? You see that. So if you start to recognize that as this disease, this suffering that is permeating this samsaric condition, the world we live in, then I don't want more disease. I'd like cure. I'd like to offer cure. And so when my mind goes to, some sort of joy for, someone getting theirs, right? What I'm noticing is the disease is now ripening in me. It's contagious. It's contagious. Now I'm getting poisoned with it. And the antidote, is this wisdom, this loving kindness, this compassion. And if we're going to cure the world, well, it's not going to be cured with anger, hatred, and ill will. It's going to be cured. The disease needs the medicine. And so with that, then, when I catch my mind there, compassion rise, think of the suffering they have, think of the state of their afflictions. And the example we use in Tibetan Buddhism, which is very clear, is these yogis that had spent decades in prison being tortured by Chinese, like decades, like 30 years, and tortured nearly daily. And like a good day for that monk was that the guy torturing him was sick today, and these monks, their practice was strong, their practice was amazing, and the story that we refer to all the time is this, this yogi had spent a few decades in prison, been tortured nearly daily, and had finally made it out of prison, made it out of Tibet, made his way to Dharamsala, and the Dalai Lama, went to, every Tibetan that gets out, Dalai Lama sees, and he goes to speak to him. He's been through, and he said it must have been dangerous in there. And the monk said, yeah, it was very dangerous. I almost lost my compassion. I almost lost my compassion for the person torturing me, for the things that we're going through. Because that was the important thing. And he could see the karma that's going to ripen in these soldiers and in these prison guards and in all the people doing the harm. He saw the karmic damage that they're going to have to live with for decades and eons. And so his compassion was what they were doing to him was this physical body, but what they're doing to themselves. It's just incredibly painful. So taking time to really reflect and notice when we see anger, hatred, malicious behavior, self-centeredness, recognize the disease, the suffering they have, the level of disease they have. And I find that's a good counteraction for me, and we can show up to participate in healthy political action and things of that nature from our side, but not out of anger and hatred and ill will. It's like Nelson Mandela and all these other examples where, he became friends with his prison guards, and one day he became president and they're in the front row. That how that person is at that moment is not how they'll necessarily be in the future. It's how they're in a moment. And there's conditions for that. I've done a lot of harm in my life. I'm not the person I was. And there's quite a few stories of people who've changed their lives. And so they're not what we're putting on them, but they are struggling. And so that's one way it helps me. When I catch that self-righteous, thing, which, shows up, right? Which is also, we do want to support healthy environments, right? And hold people accountable in healthy ways, but not because they're a bad person or wishing ill will, but because we want them and others to be better. And so that's why we have accountability for behaviors, but not the nature of the person. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, let us dedicate the merit and wisdom from our time together. Let me pop it up here. Come on, cooperate. There we go. So there's a lot of things we could have done on a Wednesday evening, but we have taken the time to come together to nurture and grow with Dharma within our hearts and minds in ways that are meaningful for us to be of benefit to others, to understand ourselves, to improve the inner and outer qualities of our lives and our interactions with others, to be of benefit to the world. A lot of good merit there. Let us dedicate this time and energy, this merit and wisdom that we have cultivated collectively together and throughout our lives for the benefit of all beings. May our efforts here find its way into the world, healing anger, healing hatred, cultivating compassion and wisdom, that others may benefit from our time together, find liberation from their suffering, and for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may apply these teachings on virtue in our lives in ways that ripen and unfold, allowing us to have access to our primordial nature, be liberated, and be of benefit to others. And with that context, those who'd care to, I invite you to join me in the formal refuge prayer. By this merit may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om